Oh, look, a quick follow-up. I decided to take the head apart, probably against my best judgment. So I'm going to show you what I did, but in a reverse order while I put it back together, and then we can see if it fixed it or made it worse. I will be the first to admit I have no idea what I'm doing with this. So this is more a look at how this head comes apart if anyone wants to tackle this themselves. But the actual details that I did here and how I oiled it and the things I didn't remember to mark or whatever, take that with a grain of salt. This is more just a visual so people can see how this head drum comes apart. So I have it down to where you just see the two bearings. Here is the lower bearing, and you can kind of see through that hole the upper bearing. So what I did is I put this shaft back in so that it's sitting inside the two bearings, and then I dropped a bit of oil around the sleeve here and the same thing on the top and ran it around. Then I removed this shaft, cleaned up all the excess oil, and then went in with a Q-tip and got rid of all the oil between this inner sleeve and this shaft, and then popped it back in. So there's a bit of oil on there, and you can see there's a bit of oil on this little washer that it rides on the top. And I put just a dab, just a little bit on the collar here where it's going to touch this bearing on the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is reinsert this from the top and then put this collar back on. This collar is just removed with 2 Allen key screws. Seems pretty quiet. The wobble's just this little top bit here. Seems to spin fairly well, maybe not the best. I left a bit of a play here, like I can lift this up ever so slightly. I found if I put the collar on the bottom on too tight, it scrapes even with a bit of oil. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing, so do not take this as an educational video. This is just, you're going through an adventure with me. Okay, up next, we put the stator back. I believe I got that right. So here it is. It's got 3, looks like Hall effect sensors that I think they look at the magnets on the rotor here. The only other sort of marking I can see is this little divot on here. That might be important. Unfortunately, I didn't quite line it up or mark where it was. Stator drops in right around this collar here. Then there are 2 screws that hold it in place. So now this collar can spin inside. Then 3-pin connector gets plugged back in. All right, now it's time to drop on the rotor magnets. Now, I think I have the position correct, though I might not. So for this, I'm just going to be bloop, dropping it on and seeing if I get it right. When popping this back on, there's a little insulator, rubber insulator that goes underneath these screws and kind of goes into the holes here to insulate from the screws to this metal piece here. And when I was removing it, I just kind of went in with a thin screwdriver and scraped it up because it was actually stuck to this. You don't really need to remove it. I probably didn't need to, didn't know that, but I removed it. But be careful so you don't damage it because it's very old. Okay, now we're on the top part, and I think this is where it matters. You'll see there's this little sensor here that lines up and detects this and this. So I took photos removing this to line this up correctly with this circuit board. I recommend you do the same when you're removing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the head disc back on, screw it down, solder it on based on the information that I took photos of on my phone. Okay, head disc is back in. I didn't mention it before, it goes without saying, do your absolute darndest not to go anywhere near the 2 little heads. Luckily this is a 2-head model, so I'm just able to kind of do most of things on this side here. All that's left is to put this upper drum assembly on, and As I said before, I have no tools to mark what I did, so we'll see how that goes. There, top drum is back in. What I did is I just sort of tightened these to the point where I still had a bit of play on the top bit. And this seems to suck it into where it should be. But what I do is making sure that the heads are not near my finger, like you can see they're here and here, go and just sort of feel to make sure that the top and lower head drum are as aligned as possible. Again, this is not a very scientific or accurate way. I've done this on the V600 and it worked out okay. So again, here's hoping. Well, the good news is the bearing sounds are gone. The bad news is I didn't quite get something lined up. So pause is noisy. This is beta 3, so this should be relatively clean. Pause is noisy. I have some tracking noise that I'm unable to get rid of. So I can add more.
Well, in that case, have it read lost.
I can't seem to get rid of it. And beta scan is atrocious. So I need to figure out what I did wrong. Oh, but those bearings. Oh, that is delightful. Okay, that's as good as it's gonna get. And holy heck, trying to realign this when I don't know what I'm doing. What I ended up doing is moving the head disc around, trying different positions to try and sort of get the clearest picture where I don't have these random sort of, almost like, they don't look like typical dropout noise bars. It's more of just like a clear, almost translucent noise bar that tends to show up. What I found was that pretty much perfectly centering it with those screws, because it turns out there is a bit of movement on the disc, did well. And I have the least amount of switching noise between the two fields. So it won't show up here, but between the two fields, you were getting a lot of flag polling, which means one of them wasn't lined up quite right to the switching point. So I got it pretty good there. And then this top part of the drum, what I ended up doing, and this is not the right way to do it, I don't recommend it, is just putting one screw in, mostly tightening it so obviously it doesn't scrape against the heads, but just loose enough that I can move it around until I get the cleanest picture. So between that and the head discs, I'm going to say this is good enough. I'm going to try some more tapes in it. I'm happy with how quiet the head drum is. That's just delightful. It's just, too bad I don't have the proper tools and know-how to do this, but hey, it's one way to learn, right?
Hey Garfield, watch this.
Seems to be working fine on beta 3 too. I'm gonna dial in the alignment, because I did, when I was trying to figure out the problem, mess with this guide and this guide. Picture's fine. I just want to make sure the audio, the hi-fi is nice and crisp. Well, that was just a little part 2. There's always a part 2, isn't there? To this VCR to get the video head drum to not be as noisy and probably prolong its life so the bearings don't heat up and blah blah blah. I don't think the head is aligned as well as it was before. Picture's great. Hi-fi audio is great, though it's got a hum to it, and I don't remember if it had a hum before. When I say a hum, I don't mean like the clicking that you get in a hi-fi track when it's the tracking is off. What I mean is a hum, like a woo, 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 and it's almost being reduced by noise reduction. So the hum is there with audio. When someone talks, there's like a woo, woo, woo below. And I've heard that on some beta tapes. I don't know if it's just the tapes, if it's the machine, or if it's to do with the alignment I made on this. If anyone knows, let me know. But I mean, otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it. Okay, thanks for watching.
Pt.2.